Hi, Ron. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
I might have known you would pick today to get back to work.
How come?
The weather. It suddenly turned cool, balmy, and beautiful. Okay.
Been a little hot here?
Terrible. And sticky. Come on. Go ahead, make me miserable. How was Acapulco?
Sunshine, great surf, wonderful food, and cool nights. You know, I didn't even get sick. And how do you like my tan?
It looks terrible. Acapulco, isn't that where those kids dive off the cliff into the sea?
Yeah, and that's one thing I didn't like.
Why not?
Well, you know how dangerous that is?
Once a safety director, always a safety director.
Yeah, you're right. But you know, seriously, every time I saw those divers, I thought about you and this place and the people on the planet. So, tell me, what's been going on here?
Well, let's see. Inspection schedule was kept. Supervisors turned in reports of safety contacts.
Okay.
Oh, purchasing wants to see you before they sign the contract on that new drying oven.
Okay, I'll call them today.
And about the usual number of first aid cases, nothing big.
That's all?
Most of it can wait, but there were 3 accidents I wanted to talk to you about. Not serious ones, just different. They all seem to have something in common.
Do you think we might have a little epidemic starting?
Well, at least if there's a pattern in them, maybe we can stop it by training people to recognize the symptoms.
Okay, I might as well get right back into harness. Tell me about it.
Now, this first one involved 2 electricians. You know Al Sorrentino?
Sure.
Well, he and his partner, Dick McCann, were running a new conduit down aisle J. They got to the corner of aisle 5. Dick was supposed to place the warning cones and stand guard while Al locked the wheels on the rolling scaffold and climbed up. What happened was that while Joe was locking the wheels, Dick went to get the cones, and somebody in the machine shop called to Dick, and he walked over to talk to the guy. Meanwhile, Al got the wheels locked and had just gotten started up the ladder when a forklift came down the intersecting aisle. Now, that's aisle 5. The driver couldn't see the scaffolding. At the corner, he made a tight turn and saw the scaffolding and tried to swerve out, but he struck one leg of it.
And poor old Al took a fall.
That he did. He was just lucky he hadn't climbed higher.
Well, it was a blind corner for the truck driver, and there weren't any cones out to warn him.
McCann felt really terrible about that. He said that in another minute he would have had the cones in place.
Sure, and Al figured everything was okay. All he had to do was climb up there and do his job. He didn't wait to make sure that the cones were in place.
No, he didn't check. Now, that was the first case. Now, here's another one. This one was caused by a defective drill. First, the drill had a short in it. And second, someone had removed the ground prong from an extension cord he got in the tool room.
Well, that just about tells the story then, doesn't it?
Except for the details, you can guess what happened. Anyway, 2 maintenance men, Ken Camp and Foy Grady, were working on a job. Ken went around to the tool room and picked up a drill and an extension cord. When he got back to the work area, he hooked it all up and handed it to Grady.
How seriously was he hurt?
He got a hell of a jolt. Luckily, he wasn't frozen, so he let go of the trigger, and he didn't fall off the ladder.
Well, it was sure lousy equipment maintenance. Somebody in the tool room should have checked out that drill.
Of course. And Camp should never have accepted a cord that was missing the ground prong.
Well, why did he?
Oh, he said he just didn't look at the plug. Said that he figured that whatever would come out of the tool room would be okay. His supervisor didn't think much of that excuse. Really chewed him out.
Oh, sure, he was wrong. And whoever should have done the checking in the tool room was wrong. But you know, the one who really interests me in that case is Foy Grady.
Why? He was sort of mouse-trapped, wasn't he?
Ah, but he shouldn't have been. I'm beginning to think that what we've got here are 2 examples of the let George do it syndrome.
What?
The let George do it syndrome. I'll explain it to you later, but first, you said there was a 3rd accident, didn't you?
Yes. Here we are. The injured man was Carl Schultz, the drill press operator. The setup man had completed his setup and Schultz had started work, and he finished 2 out of the 4 drilling operations. Everything was all right, and then he started on the 3rd drill. The backup bar wasn't tight. Schultz placed the fixture he was working with against the bar and started the drill. Under pressure, the bar gave, and the fixture began to spin. Schultz caught a corner that really sliced up his finger good.
So, the setup man didn't tighten the bar enough, and Schultz didn't check.
Right. He just assumed that... Of course. I see what you mean. Let George do what you said. But we all have to let George do it, don't we? I mean, nobody can do all the jobs himself.
Oh, sure. We have to divide up the work. This is a very specialized world, but still it's easy to get used to having George do it. That's the other side of specialization. It's easy after a while to assume that George has done it, even when your physical safety and sometimes your life are at stake.
Look, Ron, you know me. I've been sitting here thinking. So what do we do about it? I mean, suppose we use these cases in the next training program. What do we say about them? What do we do about George?
Good question. I think first we talk to Schultz and Grady and Al Sorrentino, but they've probably already learned their lesson. What we've got to worry about are all the people who could get hurt if they do the same thing and take George too much for granted. We've got to get across to them. Protect yourselves. Check the wheel chocks on the truck. Check the lockout on the machine. Check behind the vehicle before you back up. Don't count on someone else. Be responsible for your own safety. Don't take anything for granted.
Sure, we can do that. But what about George? Do we talk to him too?
You bet we do. Oh, I know you don't have to talk to George after he's goofed and somebody got hurt, or at least you don't have to talk much. I'll bet Dick McCann did feel lousy when Al got hurt because he hadn't put out those safety cones. No, the trick is to talk to George before he goofs.
How do we do that? Nobody ever messes up on purpose.
Well, that's exactly right. The point is that George is everywhere. He could be anybody. Like all of us, he does his job right most of the time, but occasionally he slips up and there's trouble. I remember something that happened to me 10 years ago when I was a department supervisor. There were acid tanks in my section, so of course we had emergency showers. Well, one of the valves on a shower began to leak, and I reported it. They sent a maintenance man over to fix it. He turned off the water, hung up a sign saying, "Out of order," and then he went to work. When he finished the job, he took down the sign, came over to me, and said the shower was fixed. I thanked him and signed his work order. Naturally, it was my business to check the shower. I knew that, and I was thinking about it. But just then, somebody came up and said I was needed right away. So I went off and did whatever it was I was wanted for. The shower was still turned off. But when I got back, I didn't remember to check. I suppose I assumed that everything was all right.
So what happened?
Well, it was one of those times when you don't get away with making a mistake. A few days later, one of the men was splashed with acid and ran over to the shower. Nothing happened, no water.
Wow, I get your point. So you assumed that the maintenance man had done his job and old George hadn't done it.
Oh, it was worse than that. That poor fellow who got burned and stepped under a dry shower, I was the one who hadn't done my job. I was George. Mary, your 3 accidents are all related, and the pattern is likely to show up again. It cuts 2 ways. When you're responsible for the safety of others, and we all are sometimes, don't be George, the sort of George who didn't do it. And where it's a matter of your personal safety, don't rely on George. Always check.
I hope we can get those 2 ideas across. But it won't be easy.
Oh, I know, but we gotta try. There are easier ways to learn than by getting hurt or by hurting others.